hope I'm thinking that these are good news stories because he's paid back £6,000 worth of free concert tickets. These are Taylor Swift tickets. I mean, grand shot, thank you very much, over 2 different nights. But he's kept all the suits. He's ended the rental agreement.
Keir Starmer, the man who promised to bring integrity and transparency back to British politics, is now at the centre of a scandal that could end his career. UK media has just leaked explosive details: luxury townhouses, designer clothing, and undisclosed gifts, all tied to a millionaire donor. It's got everyone asking, how deep does Starmer's connection to this secretive world of high-end perks go? Could this be the final nail in the coffin for his leadership?
Just 2 days a week they've been asked to turn up at their workplace. Now, they're all members of the PCS, that's the Public and Commercial Services Union. They've refused to go into the office since May, and now they're escalating the dispute, refusing to work overtime.
The source of this shocking leak is what makes it even more sensational. It didn't come from an opposition party or the media doing investigative work. No. This bombshell information about Keir Starmer's undeclared gifts came from deep inside his administration. This means someone close to Starmer, someone trusted with intimate knowledge of his day-to-day dealings, decided to go public with details that were never meant to see the light of day. Such a leak can only happen when there's growing discontent or betrayal within the team, suggesting that not everyone around Starmer was as loyal as they seemed.
Now, of course, people have been giving gifts for a reason. Specifically, these people. This is who has given the most gifts and hospitality to Keir Starmer.
The fact that this information was so tightly held within the inner circle of Starmer's administration makes the leak even more significant. Nobody outside the team would have had access to this level of detail. The leaked information included everything from exact figures, like how much Starmer had received in gifts and hospitality, to the names of people who attended meetings at these undisclosed luxury properties. Such precise and incriminating details suggest that the person responsible for the leak was directly involved, or at least had a front row seat to Starmer's questionable activities. This raises serious questions about trust within Starmer's team. If someone from within can leak such sensitive information, how much trust and loyalty remains?
We all made it, it's a big story, we all got angry about it, and now it's all ruined for everyone. Like the people who tried to claim for duck houses and moats on the expenses, and when it goes too far, it's ruined for everyone. I mean, the reality is, though, most MPs do accept freebies.
The heart of the scandal lies in the lavish gifts provided by Lord Ali, a millionaire donor to the Labour Party. These weren't just token gestures of support. We're talking about luxury properties and expensive items that Keir Starmer enjoyed without properly declaring them. One of the most eyebrow-raising examples is the use of a £4 million townhouse in Soho. This wasn't some occasional retreat for Starmer to unwind. It became a hub for his team's election strategy meetings. High-ranking officials, including his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray and Pat McFadden, were regular attendees at these private gatherings in this swanky townhouse. It wasn't just a one-off either. Starmer also had access to a penthouse in Covent Garden, a spot that any Londoner would recognise as one of the most expensive areas in the city.
Huge tens of thousands of pounds worth of help he's had from Lord Ali, a lot of which also hasn't been fully declared, like the cost of that penthouse apartment in Covent Garden for 18 million quid during his son's GCSEs, he claims, although it kept it for a month after.
But here's where things get tricky. None of this was declared. According to the rules for MPs, any benefit that could influence their decisions or behaviour must be made public. But Starmer and his team either underestimated or completely overlooked the value of these gifts. He declared his stay in the Covent Garden penthouse, but only valued it at £2,000, which is far below the actual market rate. Considering similar properties can fetch £1,800 per day, Starmer's disclosure was not only misleading, but downright suspicious. This pattern continued with other luxury items, such as designer clothing worth thousands of pounds, also provided by Lord Ali. Rather than listing these as personal gifts, Starmer claimed they were donations to his private office, further muddying the waters. Keir Starmer's response to the unfolding scandal was to repay £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality that he had received, in an apparent attempt to brush the issue under the rug. But was this repayment enough to fix the damage? To many, it feels like too little, too late. The fact that Starmer thought he could simply write a cheque and move on from the controversy shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how serious the situation had become. This wasn't just about money, it was about the public's trust in their leader, and that kind of trust isn't easily regained with a simple repayment.
Absolutely, and I think it was slightly baffling today for Keir Starmer to return some of the money in terms of gifts, £6,000, while of course, as you say, not returning the £32,000 in clothes from Lord Ali. So it's a kind of half in, half out thing which almost reignites interest in the story.
Starmer's repayment of the £6,000 does raise more questions than it answers. What exactly was this amount covering? A few nights in a luxury townhouse? Or was it meant to cover a broader range of gifts, including expensive clothing and other lavish perks provided by Lord Ali? The problem is, no matter how you frame it, £6,000 is a drop in the ocean compared to the real value of what Starmer had received. By repaying just a portion of the benefits, he inadvertently highlighted the much larger amounts that had gone undeclared for months. In his attempt to do damage control, Starmer downplayed the scandal, treating the gifts as though they were minor indiscretions, perhaps hoping that the public would see them as part of the usual political landscape. But this strategy may have backfired. When the media began digging deeper and uncovered more details about the gifts, including luxury properties worth millions and high-end designer clothing, it became impossible for Starmer to pass them off as inconsequential. Rather than addressing the issue head-on, Starmer's attempts to sweep it under the rug only magnified the sense that he wasn't being fully transparent, which is ironic considering that he had built his platform on promises of integrity and honesty. This scandal has done real harm to Starmer's reputation. His repayment of the £6,000 looks more like an admission of guilt than an act of good faith. And his refusal to take full responsibility early on has led to even more scrutiny. Instead of putting the issue to bed, his actions have only raised more doubts about his leadership and his ability to uphold the principles he once campaigned on.
In Covent Garden for 18 million quid during his son's GCSEs, he claims, although it kept it for a month after his GCSEs are finished, worth way more than the 20 grand which Keir Starmer claimed for it.
The true scale of this scandal becomes even more staggering when you consider the properties and items involved. Take the £18 million Covent Garden penthouse, for example. Starmer's family reportedly stayed there for around 6 weeks during the election campaign. This isn't just any old property. It's a luxurious penthouse in one of the most expensive parts of London, a place where rents can easily run into thousands of pounds per day. Yet, when Starmer declared the stay, he valued it at only £2,000, which barely covers a couple of nights, let alone a 6-week stay. This gross undervaluation raises serious questions about why the full value wasn't disclosed. Was it an oversight, or was Starmer deliberately trying to minimise the appearance of accepting such lavish hospitality? But that's not all. Starmer also had access to a £2 million Manhattan apartment, which was used by none other than his deputy, Angela Rayner. Again, the value of the stay was vastly underreported. Properties like this in prime Manhattan locations are worth far more than what was declared, and the public deserves to know why such an understatement was made. These properties weren't just used for personal leisure either. Starmer and his team held strategic meetings in these luxury locations. This blurs the line between what's personal and what's political, and that's where the real trouble lies. Beyond the luxury properties, Starmer also received tens of thousands of pounds worth of designer clothing, all courtesy of Lord Ali. From expensive suits to high-end casual wear, these weren't just token gifts, they were substantial. Starmer's team, however, downplayed the clothing donations, categorising them as contributions to his private office rather than personal gifts. This sleight of hand may have worked temporarily, but as more information came to light, it became clear that these items were far more valuable than initially suggested. And again, the failure to declare them properly only raises more suspicion about whether Starmer was deliberately trying to hide the extent of Lord Ali's influence.
Please tell me that Wahid Ali's relationship with Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, is key to his importance at the moment. Now, this was, Keir Starmer said, a swift campaign stop.
What makes this scandal even more explosive is the involvement of senior Labour figures like Sue Gray and Pat McFadden. Sue Gray, Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, and McFadden, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, were both regular attendees at meetings held in the luxury properties provided by Lord Ali. These weren't just casual get-togethers, these were high-level political strategy sessions where Starmer and his closest allies discussed plans for the Labour Party's future, including election strategies. The fact that such important political decisions were being made in these undisclosed luxury settings cast a long shadow over the transparency and integrity of these operations.
Haven't told me Sue Gray should be putting a stop to this. But the Prime Minister's not rowing back. In fact, he told journalists this week, if I don't accept a gift of hospitality, I can't go to a game. You could say, well, that's bad luck. That's why gifts have to be registered.
When you hear that key members of Starmer's team were involved, it's hard not to wonder how deep this scandal goes. Sue Gray is a particularly controversial figure, known for her role in the Partygate investigation, and her involvement in this situation only makes things murkier. Gray is supposed to be one of the figures in British politics most committed to upholding standards of transparency and propriety. Yet here she was, attending strategy meetings in properties that hadn't even been declared. McFadden's presence adds another layer, as he holds a senior position within the Labour Party and is a trusted figure in Starmer's inner circle. Both of these figures being present at these secretive, luxury meetings suggests that this wasn't just about Starmer. It was a coordinated effort involving his top team.
At his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, who we now, as of today, believe is paid more than the Prime Minister himself. And that, Sophie, is not the backdrop the Prime Minister wants just ahead of his first conference in government.
These revelations have serious implications for Starmer's leadership. It's not just Starmer's integrity on the line, it's the entire inner workings of his administration. If Gray and McFadden were complicit in the non-declaration of these lavish gifts, then what does that say about Labour's commitment to transparency? It looks as though this scandal isn't just an isolated issue, but something that permeates the upper echelons of the Labour Party. And for a leader who campaigned on a platform of doing politics differently, it's a massive blow to Starmer's credibility. The involvement of these high-ranking figures only deepens the public's suspicion that something was being hidden, and it puts a significant strain on the loyalty and trust within Starmer's team. Keir Starmer's image as a politician built on integrity has taken a serious hit. For years, Starmer has positioned himself as a clean-cut leader, a contrast to the scandals of the past that tainted other political figures. He campaigned on promises of transparency, accountability, and ethical governance. Yet, this scandal has shattered that image. Public trust in Starmer has been shaken, and for many, it feels like a betrayal. After all, how can a politician claim to be different from the rest when they're caught accepting luxury gifts and failing to disclose them? This scandal isn't just a political misstep. It's a moral failure that cuts to the heart of Starmer's credibility. The timing couldn't be worse. The UK is grappling with a cost of living crisis, and many people are struggling to make ends meet. Against this backdrop, the sight of a politician enjoying luxury townhouses and expensive gifts is particularly galling. The public's reaction has been one of outrage, with many feeling that Starmer's actions show just how out of touch he is with the daily struggles of ordinary people. It's one thing to accept donations or gifts as part of political life, But it's another thing entirely to hide them, especially when they involve high-end properties and designer clothes. For a leader who has portrayed himself as a man of the people, this scandal has made him look elitist and dishonest. The media, of course, has had a field day with the story. UK media outlets have been relentless in their coverage, questioning not only Starmer's actions, but also the broader implications for Labour's leadership. Headlines about undeclared gifts, luxury apartments, and high-level strategy meetings in secretive locations have dominated the news cycle. Journalists are asking tough questions about what Starmer knew when he knew it, and why he didn't declare these gifts earlier. The media frenzy has only fueled the public's scepticism, and Starmer's attempts at damage control, such as repaying a fraction of the gifts, have done little to quell the storm.